Composer may not stray far from the linear design 343 Industries uses throughout most of Halo 4, but it is one of the best examples of it. It's packed full of interesting story beats and frantic gameplay, and there's not a Promethean in sight, a welcomed absence. Composer begins with the Didact en route to the Ivanov station. The orbital research facility houses the Composer, which he hopes to get his hands on again, so that he can continue digitizing humans and turning them into Prometheans. It's also located close to Installation 03, which is where the UNSC first found the device.
A Halo?
Installation 3. It's where Infinity found the coordinates for Requiem.
Then why are they bypassing it?
Because the Composer's not on the ring.
Master Chief then commandeers a Lich, and I honestly feel like this entire opening is one big tease. You never get to visit the Halo in question, nor do you see Chief taking out the Covenant, the two most fascinating things about these cinematics. The Ivanov is a strong setting I'll talk more about shortly, but considering the Composer was discovered on the installation, you'd think leaving it there and setting the mission on the Ringworld would be a much more compelling prospect. I mean, the series is named Halo. Regardless, after a chat with Dr. Sandra Tilson, a xenoarchaeologist, Cortana has another breakdown which leads to a crash landing.
Correct your approach.
Yes, but he also said he works better alone. I can see why you chose him, Catherine.
Cortana!
I'm your greatest achievement and you detest
Pull up! Now!
Waking aboard a base already overrun by Covenant, Dr. Tilson contacts Chief again, with the Spartan promising to help with the evacuation effort. Composer is divided into thirds, with it featuring 2 extended on-foot sections followed by a Mantis set piece at its end. The first segment especially is amazing. As you traverse the station, NPCs, both Marines and researchers, are cut down by Covenant, or will join you if you're quick enough saving them. A new weapon is introduced in the form of the sticky detonator. This is the only time it appears during the campaign, and it being projectile-based makes utilising it successfully very satisfying. Even the level design is spot on, with there being multiple angles of approach and a real sense of you moving through a well thought out, cohesive environment. A particular highlight is you fending off aggressors while trying to raise a barricade to stop them entering. It may remind you of a certain section from Halo 3's Crow's Nest, and that's because they are very much alike, although that doesn't make it any less entertaining. For those who fancy a good scrap and don't wish to end things too early, you can also elect to do nothing, which leads to Phantoms endlessly ferrying enemies in. The view is also spectacular. One of the few areas where 343 Industries has always matched, or perhaps sometimes even bettered, Bungie is in their ability to craft stunning skyboxes, and Installation 03 looming large behind an asteroid belt is evidence of that. You may never step foot on Halo itself, which again is irritating, but it's a constant presence nonetheless. I also cannot overstate what a huge difference the amount of AI populating the station makes too. It's possible to fight alongside a group during the first encounter, you meet another for the barricade defense, and stumble upon a third here as you shoot your way to the top of the facility. Even the scientists get involved once you've ascended, although they don't last long against the 2 hunters which have taken up residence in their lab. Halo 4 already includes the classic fend the Covenant off as they attack a human ship or orbital platform level in the form of Dawn, one of the game's best outings, but 343's second stab at the concept is the more gripping, thanks to how dynamic events are and the scale, both inside and outside the sprawling site. It's relentlessly paced in the best way possible, and one of the very best parts of 4's campaign. A couple of cool details here before we move on. Taking the time to have a look around the lab, which you may not do, and understandably so, as there is an air of urgency about proceedings. There are terminals detailing the various experiments undertaken at the Ivanov. There's also Installation 03's activation index. How the UNSC managed to secure it, I do not know. If you're a Halo superstar like I am in my own mind, you'll leave the many scientists you managed to save to meet Dr. Tilson face to face.
If we can't move the Composer, we have to make sure the Didact can't either.
Oh, wait. We have years of work invested here.
Inventory lists 7 excavation-grade Havoc mines. Just one of those would turn this base into a piñata.
Crossing the outdoor area housing the composer and an absolute shed-load of allies, your next task is to reactivate defense turrets which will aid in the evacuation. The Didact contacts Chief again too. Does anyone else find it absolutely bananas that the series' new villain, an apparently fearsome foe introduced proper for the first time in 4, barely appears at all? Since you encountered him at the end of Forerunner, which did a good job of setting him up, he has spoken to you at regular intervals, but you've never actually seen him again. Dawn and Requiem occur prior to the Didact's reveal, and in Infinity, Reclaimer, Shutdown and Composer you only hear him speak, which means there are just 2 levels he features in the flesh. I've done the maths, if you can call it that, and across those 2 missions he has roughly 6 minutes of screen time, a paltry amount all things considered. There are the terminals too, I suppose, but I don't count those as much. In fairness, his absence isn't something I paid much attention to in the past, but after playing through the game twice while preparing to make these videos, it became very noticeable by this point in the story. The Didact has never been a villain I've been particularly passionate about, despite him having some potential, and in the present, with more perspective, I think him being practically non-existent for a huge chunk of 4 is why. It's difficult to get emotionally invested in the struggle against an antagonist you scarcely meet. In gameplay terms, this second third is not quite as bombastic as that which precedes it, but there's still plenty of pluses. For one thing, it's a visual treat, with the smoke and fire and lighting really showing off how graphically ahead of its time 343's maiden outing could be. It's a lot moodier than earlier sections too, helping give the impression that the Ivanov is buckling under the strain of the Covenant's assault. Also, ejecting Covenant from the airlocks before they're able to reach you is good clean fun, as is fighting them and them alone for Composer's duration. That hasn't happened since Requiem, and since the Prometheans entered the fray, the campaign has been awash with them, with Shutdown one of the worst offenders. Midnight follows Composer, and that also features only Prometheans, and so this palette cleanser is much needed, although you could argue it only serves to highlight how much more engaging taking on the Covenant is. That rings true in terms of weaponry as well. Promethean guns aren't available, nor are they a necessity due to the Covenant being easier to kill and thus requiring less ammo. In general, there's a much better flow to combat. A pair of invisible elites guard the defense grid's console, but they shouldn't cause you too much trouble. With the cannons activated, it's time to deal with the Composer itself, and again, do also note the breathtaking skybox.
I'm here. Any luck?
Cortana's bringing the defense grid online now.
Okay, that's it.
I hear it. We'll broadcast the final evac orders.
The nuke?
We're rigging it now. Meet us back on the upper platform and we'll help you get it to the artifact.
There are a few more Covenants who need to be dealt with as you retrace your steps, however they are but stragglers in the grand scheme of things. The big battle begins soon after. Holding off waves of Covenant in a Mantis is decent enough, and a much better use of the vehicle than during Infinity. Towards the end of that mission, you plod down a long path frustratingly slowly, a great introduction to the Mantis as it lets you get acquainted with its functions, but annoying in that it comes immediately after a similarly laboured Scorpion segment. At the end it opens up and becomes a defence set piece, which is where it shines, and that's all you get here in Composer. The Mantis's extreme lack of speed becomes way less of an issue when you're circling round a medium-sized circular environment of your own accord, and with so many distractions constantly appearing, you're unlikely to get bored. As the action continues to intensify, you take on ground troops, then ground vehicles, and finally Banshees, and so even if you're someone like me who could take or leave the UNSC's new vehicle, there's much enjoyment to be found. Unfortunately, despite the best efforts of Chief Cortana and Dr. Tilson, the Didact eventually manages to get his hands on the Composer. The trio make panicked last-minute plans to try and stop him, but it's all in vain as he uses the device. Dr. Tilson, all of the researchers nearby, and presumably every other human left within the station are composed, reduced to nothing but data which could then be used to create Prometheans. It's one of the darkest scenes in the entire series, and I love it. Master Chief thankfully survives thanks to the Librarian, making him almost completely immune to the Composer's effect when the pair met during Reclaimer. He tries to get Cortana to focus on the job at hand, but with the AI on her last legs following repeated malfunctions during the level, she can focus only on her own fate as Composer concludes.
They'll pair you with another AI. Maybe even another Cortana model if Halsey lets them.
That's not going to happen.
It won't be me. You know that, right?
Having really got to grips with Halo 4 over the last few months, Composer may well be my second favourite mission in the entire game after Reclaimer. It's a contained experience which funnels you down a rigid path, but that path is one full to the brim with action and intrigue to keep you entertained. Fighting only the Covenant makes a massive difference in how tolerable 4's combat is too, and it's such a shame that this is the last time we see them before the end credits roll. The Mantis section, to round things out, won't be to everyone's taste. As mentioned, personally, I'm relatively indifferent, but the unsettling cinematic which follows hot on its heels, as well as Chief and Cortana's conversation, ensures it ends on a high note. In the past, I've often made the claim that Halo's penultimate levels have been disappointing affairs when they should be ramping things up. Composer, however, is definitely one which bucks that trend. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and Spartans. If you had a blast, do consider liking, subscribing and sharing your thoughts. And all's well, we'll catch up again soon.